Ask almost anyone what they want in a kitchen, and island is the top of the list. And for a good reason. It's where the homework gets done, it's where guests gather, where we stand, where we drink our cup of coffee in the morning. It's the one place in the kitchen that does a little bit of everything. But here's what I've learned after designing a lot of them. An island is not just a big, beautiful slab in the middle of a room, it's a whole series of decisions. And when we get those decisions right, the island stops being a piece of furniture and becomes a true heart of the entire home. So today, let's design a kitchen island done right. If we haven't met, I'm Ariana Adireh Anderson. I design homes and my team builds them. And the island might be one of my favorite things to design in a kitchen. It works so hard and it gathers so beautifully all at once. So a great island isn't about being the biggest that can possibly fit in a space. It's about getting a handful of decisions and choices right, so it feels effortless to use and it pulls people that we love towards it. Let's walk through all of it step by step. Let's start with the size. Bigger is not automatically better. And this is where a lot of gorgeous islands go wrong. A single most number here is the island itself. It's the space around it. We want at least 42 to 48 inches of clear floor on every single side, so people can move, open drawers and doors, and pass the cook without feeling squeezed. When the island grows so large that it chokes the walkways, the whole kitchen starts to feel, well, awkward, no matter how beautiful it is. So I always size the island to a level that has enough of clearance and let the island be whatever it fits comfortably inside of it. Give the island room to breathe. The whole kitchen will breathe with it. An island needs a real minimum to be useful too, roughly 4 feet by 2 feet. And if we are adding a sink or some seats, we want even a more depth to that island. But clearance around it always comes first. Now, let's talk about the shape of the top too. Here's a real shift happens and why it matters. For years, kitchen had that raised bar, the second higher level on that one side of the island for seating, with a working countertop below it. And I understand why it was there. It hides the mess from the guest. But the look most people love now is the one I always design. And that's that large one level island, one gorgeous surface at the counter height and all the way across. It looks cleaner and more elegant. It feels bigger and more gorgeous. It's far more flexible because with the whole expansion, we can use it for prep, for buffet, for homework, for anything. Unless you have a specific reason to hide the sink from the seating area, a single unbroken surface is far more beautiful and more useful choice. Once the size and the shapes are right, here's a question that decides almost everything else. What is the island's main job? Is it mostly for prep station where the real cooking is happening? Is it mostly for gathering spots where people want to sit down and connect? Is it for building a primary storage or hold a sink? Most great islands do a little bit of everything, but knowing its primary role tells us how to design it. A prep island wants to sit closer to a stove and a sink and stay mostly clear on the top. A gathering island can sit a little towards the living room side and give more of itself for seating. So before we choose a single finish, let's decide what we want this island to do for us. And everything else just falls into the place right around when we have the right answer. Let's think about where the island actually is. In most homes, now the kitchen where it has that open space and it opens right into the living space. And the island does a second job. It divides, it creates that line without even having a wall that separates the kitchen from the living space. So it keeps both of these spaces separated but open to each other. So I place it in the mind of the position so the person at the island can see and talk to the people in the next room. And so it defines the kitchen without closing it off. Without having a wall place, the island organizes the whole floor plan around it. Placely poor, it neither flows awkwardly or blocks that naturally flow between the spaces. When the island sits is very important in how it will perform. Now let's talk about seating. This is where most of comfort is won or lost. And this part, sometimes people get wrong. Now, each stool, we want about 24 inches of width so that nobody is elbowing the person next to them. And we want real overhang. Now, a good one, well, let's start with 12 inches. That's all we need. But if we have 18, that will feel even more comfortable. So you can tuck your knees underneath it. One thing people forget, and it matters too, a larger overhang, let's say 24 inches, needs hidden supports. Could be a steel bracket or something that will hold the stone so it does not crack over years. And I like to place seating away from the cooking side. So when people sit around right next to hot pans, it's not the best place. Getting the seating right and the island becomes a place for your family that they can actually enjoy. Here is where real magic of an island happens. And here's some psychology behind it. This is a real reason people always end up being around the island or even leaning on the island during parties. They are close enough to talk to the cook, but they're kind of out of the way of actual work. Designers call this comfortable social distance. And when an island creates it perfectly, it lets people gather without being underfoot. Here's another reason too. When we stand or sit at the island facing into the room, we feel calm and at ease because we can see everything out and everything that is happening. It's a depth, almost primary comfort, and the island offers it so naturally. So when I design an island, I am not just designing a work surface, I'm designing the single most social spot of the whole house, and it deserves real care. Now, let's think about the work island and what it does. This is where the real decision starts to be trade-off. A prep sink on the island is a wonderful way for most of us that cook. It lets one person rinse and chop right there, while the main sink handles dishes and it keeps the cook in the middle of everything and everyone just out of their way. Just remember, a prep sink wants a bit of room as well to work around it. We want about 15 to 20 inch width plus some landing for the countertops on both sides. That will add the depth to the island, even it's good for plumbing underneath it. But if the island's real job is gathering, we often keep the countertop completely clear. One clean, beautiful, unbroken, cohesive slab, and maybe a decoration or two, a place for homework, conversation. Now, both choices are right. It just depends on what job you want the island to do. Now, some people dream of putting a range or a cooktop right in the middle of the island, and I want to talk about it honestly. It's a big decision that needs to be considered. On the plus side, the cooking on the island means you are facing your guests while you're cooking, which is lovely for entertaining. But the real trade-off is knowing what goes into it. You will need proper ventilation, either a downdraft that will rise from the island or a hood in the ceiling, or even if it's hidden in the ceiling, which becomes the major visual element, especially if you have a large hood. You will lose some clearance, flexibility surface for to a cooktop. Then you have some splatting, you have heat, and then people are sitting or gathering right around it. So I only put the cooktop in the island when someone truly loves to cook while facing the room, and understanding that ventilation might be a trade-off. For some people, keeping the cooking at perimeter and the island clear, the social is more flexible and a more beautiful choice. Now, underneath the island is a storage goldmine, so let's use every single inch of it. Deep drawers are my favorite here. They can hold pots and pans and every bulk item that we have in the kitchen. And you can see them at a glance instead of having to kneel down on your hands and knees and try to find something in a cabinet. And a lovely approach right here is mixing clothes storage with some potentially open shelving at the ends of the islands. That is another beautiful place for cookbooks and potentially a decor element, and it will create a layer of personal intention instead of having just one solid block. When the island holds much more of what the kitchen needs, the rest of the room gets to stay calm and clear. Here's a small particular detail people forget until they need it, and that's outlets. The island is where we plug in mixers, potentially charge our phone, get a laptop to do some work while we sit around the island. So I built powers tucked into the sides, or sometimes pop-ups in the island, and also hidden charging station for the phones. Then the island can actually function as the hardworking hub that it can be. It is not glamorous, but exactly the kind of investment and the type of detail that will make your kitchen feel truly designed for real life. Now, speaking of keeping things clear and clean, let's keep the top of our island most open and beautiful. It is a visual anchor of the whole kitchen. It's actually the first thing that your eyes lands on when you walk in. So the surface where we gather around. So I resist the urge of putting small appliances or clutter and let it be more simple, more open, more calm. That's the sense of generous, uncluttered surface is, and it's a big part of what makes the kitchen feel luxurious and serene, and it gives you a real home to actually work and gather. And when we do style it, let's do it with restraint. The island is not a shelf to be filled. One beautiful, simple arrangement, it's all you might need. A bowl of real fruit, a gorgeous wooden board leaning against the back, a single vase of greenery. The trick is to leave more of the surface open and let one lovely moment sit on it. The overstyled island will look cluttered. It will look busy. A simple style will look calm, considered, expensive. Less here is truly more. Now, let's light it properly. The island lighting is a jewel of the entire kitchen. A pair, maybe a trio of beautiful pendants over the island does two jobs at once. It gives us a good lighting to work and to gather by, and it's gorgeous sculpture movements overhead. The trick is the height and spacing. We want the bottom of these pendants to be 30 to 36 inches above the countertop. The height enough to see across clearly, low enough to feel intimate, and space evenly, roughly 30-inch apart. Now, putting them on a dimmer, and the island can be bright, particularly for prep, and then soft glow for those light dinners or a glass of wine. That one change, the dimmer, warms the pendants and transforms how the whole island feels at night. Let's choose the material with both beauty and real everyday use in mind. The island's top is hardworking. It works harder than any surface in the kitchen. This is where I learned towards something that is tough and forgiving, like quartzites and quality quartz that can shrug off everything the family can throw its way. And if we want to have a real showpiece, this is a place for it. Maybe add a water edge on the island where the stones pours all the way down on the sides, all the way to the floor. This is one of the most beautiful ways to let a gorgeous slab be a star of the room. A thicker or mitered edge gives that similar sensation of a solid luxury. And whether we choose a natural stone, it will get better with time, developing the patina and a story. For those of you with a large kitchen, let me mention one of the most loved luxury movements right now, and that's the double island. Instead of one enormous island that is awkward to reach across, two smaller islands side by side, each with its own clear job. One island, prep and cooking, close to the range and sink, and one for gathering and sitting, and a little bit further into the room. It sounds indulgent, but in a big kitchen, it actually works beautiful. It keeps the cooking mess separated from where the people sit, and it gives everyone room to be together without being in the way of each other. It's not for every home, but in a large open kitchen, two well-placed islands often works far better than one giant one. And through all of these decisions, let's never lose sight of what island is really for. Underneath all of the dimensions and materials, it's a gathering place. It's where your family lands in the morning and ends its day at night. It's where the guests always end up. So I designed it first and last to invite people to stay. Comfortable stools you can actually want to sit in, a clear welcoming spot to sit down and pour a glass of wine, room for children to do homework while dinner is made just across the countertop. When the island does what it draws people, it holds them in. Because the center of the whole home is your island. And that is far more than a size of a stone. That makes the island worth having. So let's bring all of this together. When we give the island a real chance on all sides, choosing a clean single-level surface, deciding its main job, placing it throughout in an open plan, getting the seating truly comfortable, choosing deliberately between working top and the one that, well, might not be, and thinking honestly about cooking, using every inch of storage underneath, built-in power, keeping the surface calm and simple, and of course lighting to bring in that warmth, and beautiful materials, and choosing materials that will age gracefully. We end up with an island that organizes the entire kitchen and gathers the people we love in it. It stops being a slab in the middle of a room and it becomes a heart of the home. So here, what I love, look at your island or a spot where one could go and ask yourself that one question that decides everything. What do I want the island to do for us? Is it prep? Is it gathering? Or a little bit of both? Now, tell me in the comments below, and I'd love to help you think through this. Let's do this together. And I do read comments, every single one of them. Now, in the next time, let's talk about something that changes how the kitchen actually feels more than anything else, and what so many kitchens get it wrong: lighting, and how to light the kitchen beautifully from bright working time to something that is comfortable for that beautiful late dinner. I can't wait to share it with you, and I will see you in the next one. If you haven't subscribed, please click below so you don't miss your next episode.